culture is a different thing. Culture is something that is inherent. You've been here 100 years as an institution. You've got a great deal of culture, but it's something that you need to understand and to celebrate. And it's also something that is in a sense, built into the woodwork. It's not something that there's a rule book for, okay? This is sort of the head and shoulders rule, which is you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Your people, especially on the front line, can't consult the rule book. They have to act first. They have to understand what the mission is, and then they have to apply that. And so it's not like you can stop in midstream and say, gee, I wonder if we're doing this right. So very much a part of the going forward culture that we're concerned about is this idea that you have to live it, and you have to be a role model, and you have to sort of govern everything that you're doing in that fashion. Also, even though you can now buy a mission statement at Walgreens for $5 and it's laminated, which is really amazing, so it won't even get dirty as it yellows, it probably doesn't mean that much because the culture of each organization is completely inherent to you and you alone. You can't copy what other people are doing. You can lead and other people can copy you, but you have to sort of act this out. And if you do that well, then you discover that your culture grows. And so we say a couple of things, because part of what I'll talk to you about tonight is not simply starting new businesses, but also transforming businesses and also turning businesses around. And all of those things, in a way, have the exact same set of tools and the exact same set of objectives. It's just a slightly different circumstance. So we think it's not about talking. We think it's actually about doing. We think that sometimes you need to change the people, but sometimes actually what you need to do is not necessarily change the people, but it's give them a better vision. People, don't really want to be led as much as they want to be shown a path and a vision and a way to get there. And so I think that's what's important. Leaders really are performance artists, and they need to demonstrate their confidence, their ability, the vision, and the ability to carry people forward. But the people have to go willingly. You can't sort of force, you can't push a rope. You really have to encourage and excite the people. And in education, what we say all the time is, this isn't something where we open the top of your head and we pour some knowledge in. This is about lighting a fire under people for the passion for education and getting them to want to learn. And it's the saddest thing in the world that our kids say that the most boring place they go to is school today. I mean, this is criminal, and we're hoping to change that in the same way that we're hoping to see a lot of changes around medicine as well. So I say, it's not about talk, it's not about posters and mission statements and things, it's about real actions, and as you begin to take those actions, the people see that, they observe that, and then they join in. And if the model works, if it makes sense, the people take care of themselves, and that's really all that you can really expect in terms of this. So it's important to understand values, it's important to have values, and the values have to relate to your organization, and this is a really interesting thing that we deal with every day as well. Because values are mutable. People think that values are absolute, but they're really not. And the reason for that is that in a different context, different values take primacy. They become most important. So what we say is grown-up organizations, and you never want to be a grown-up organization, however old you are, but grown-up organizations focus on a set of values that are wonderful values and totally appropriate, but they're not appropriate for a business that's concerned about survival. They're not appropriate for a business that doesn't know whether they'll be around in 6 months and is sort of entrusted with the futures and the livelihoods of some people who've taken a risk with them. So there's a greater sense of urgency, and even more so in businesses like ours that are trying to blow up and disrupt industries. And the values that we live by every single day are focus and get it out there and get started and understand that it won't be perfect, but that if you wait for something to be perfect, you'll be waiting a very long time. We believe in mistakes, but even mistakes are a process. It's a scientific process. It's not inadvertent. It's not something that we don't learn from. And we don't think there's such a thing as a noble failure. We think failing sucks, but we think that course corrections and adjusting what you're doing and and reacting to circumstances which people might regard as failing. We think that's exactly how you have to do this process if you want to change things. So the other thing that's important, and John Wayne is not available, but we have some equally valuable people. Values are another one of these things where it requires enforcement. It requires people that actually are committed to being unpopular or difficult. But if you don't do that, if you don't enforce your values and make them important to everybody and live that way, then you get into this mode that people say, well, these are incidental, or we could take them or leave them, and things like that. So it's not a popularity contest, but it's critical to building the kind of culture that's important to a business that wants to be successful. And you really do have to sort of enforce this thing. So I like to say, and this is something that even leaders forget all the time, which is nobody listens the first, and of course if you have kids you understand this completely, but nobody listens the first few hundred times. So you have to repeat yourself until you're sick of hearing yourself say this stuff. But that's how it goes, because people don't need to be lectured, they need to be reminded. These things don't change, they just don't necessarily always exist as top of mind. And so the goal is to remind people and to enforce and to sort of remind them. And here's a really interesting thing that we found. There are two ways that organizations grow, okay? They grow because they have strong leaders, but the leader does two things as they interact with each individual. They either ask and expect those people to conform, or they ask and expect those people to lead. And either of those outcomes is okay. Sometimes the fit just isn't there. Sometimes people are at a different point in their lives where they can't make the kind of contribution that's important. Those are okay. It's not a kumbaya society. It's not that everybody has to love each other. It's that everybody has to do their job as well as they can and come to play every single day. And so that's what we're looking for. And Steve Jobs, who was a friend of mine for many years before he passed away, said this, and this is true too: leadership and management requires people that are willing to step out there and make hard decisions. It's not easy. And you need somebody to sort of express the vision, sort of compromise, collaboration, all of these things are great, teamwork is great, but ultimately somebody has to put a stake in the ground and say, this is the right way and the way that we as an organization need to do things. And that's really important.